This is a set of Jazzmaster pickups, and to be honest, they're not perfect. There's a bit too much glue inside the bobbins, there's a small hole in the tape that isolates the pull pieces, and frankly, the builder who made them had zero experience building pickups before this set. And I know all that because I'm the one who built them. Hi everyone, Nisabel here. So why did I build a Jazzmaster set of pickups? I don't currently own a Jazzmaster, and honestly, I have zero plans to change that fact. Well, as some of you may know, a couple years ago, my brother lost every guitar he owned in a house fire. And seeing that I've been his personal guitar tech since we were kids, I tasked myself with building his collection back to be better than ever before. As of now, I've built him a parts caster, rebuilt the telly that got caught in the fire, and restored the acoustic guitar that he passed down to me when he left for college. So the next project on my list is to build him his dream Jazzmaster. But if I'm being honest, I'm a bit of a selfish person, and I only really like doing nice things for my brother when there's something in it for me. Over the past couple years, I've been working towards this goal of learning as much as I possibly can about guitar maintenance, guitar repair, and just guitars in general. But when it came to this project, I just didn't really feel like building him yet another parts guitar would really teach me anything new. But what if I built the pickups? Pickup replacement is by far the most common mod I take on, and it's something I've been doing for almost 2 decades now. But even after swapping out probably 100 or so pickups at this point, I know shockingly little about them. Sure, I know the basics of how they work and what pickups I like for certain applications, but that's kind of where my knowledge stops. I thought maybe if I built a set of pickups myself, maybe I could learn a bit more about my favorite part, and it might be kind of fun too. Now, as you can imagine, I didn't know the first place to even get started, and I sure as hell don't have any of the equipment to do this on my own. Thankfully, I knew just the people to call to help me out. Hey Mike, it's Val. All good if I come down today?
My name is Mike Wohl. I work at Lawler doing customer service, sales, support, communications, artist relations, video content, and whatever else they ask of me on a given day.
I'm Kevin Moe. I'm the production manager as well as a pickup designer here at Lawler.
I'm Jason Lawler from Lawler Guitars.
For those of you who are unfamiliar, Lawler is a boutique pickup manufacturer based out of Tacoma, Washington. You can find their pickups in all sorts of guitars, including Cowers, black bobbins, and of course, a couple of my own.
We build guitar pickups, bass pickups, steel guitar pickups, among other things. The company was started by Jason Lawler. He built guitars primarily for a while, but after some time, the demand for the pickups started to outpace the demand for guitars. So pickups became the emphasis, and the company that you know today took shape in the mid-1990s.
I started building electric guitars in the 70s, and I had a high school teacher that let me actually build a guitar in the wood shop. And then I went to Roberto Venn School in Phoenix, Arizona, and they showed us how to make rudimentary pickups like what are in Mosrite guitars.
The pickup is the lens, the sensor through which, everything is seen with an instrument. Pickups can change the voicing of an instrument tremendously. The type of pickup, how it's built in terms of wire gauge, wire type, magnets, and beyond that, just how you have it adjusted, where you have it set. There's tremendous adjustability and variability and versatility that can come out of different pickup types and the way that you use them. It's one of the things that you can spend the least effort with and comparatively less money to make the biggest changes in the total sound of your instrument and signal chain.
So let's cut right to the chase. How do you make a guitar pickup?
First you have to decide what style of pickup you want. There's 2 really basic ones. One's Fender kind of pickup and one's a Gibson kind of pickup. Of course there's other ones, but most of them fall into those 2 categories, and they sound very different. A Fender pickup has more top end and brilliance and is punchier and spankier sounding, and a Gibson pickup usually has more mid-range and it's a little smoother. So you have to decide what parameters you're going to use first. So you get your parts made, assemble your bobbins, then you wind it, and then you would attach any lead wires.
And then of course there is the wax potting process, which is basically submerging the pickup in hot wax under vacuum pressure to take out any air and to really seal the final product so that there's no microphonic tendencies or it's not prone to feedback. And then of course there's testing. We do really thorough testing of everything. When we first wind it, we test it. Before we pot it, we test it. And then when it's finished, we test it. And then we turn it into quality control and test it again.
The first step to building a pickup is deciding exactly what type of pickup you want to make, which for our purposes is a Jazzmaster set.
The Jazzmaster is unique. It's just really thin and really wide. And in general, if you have a more narrow and tall coil, it's gonna be a little bit brighter. And again, in general, a shorter and wider pickup will have a little bit more of a full sound to it. The Jazzmaster pickup is tricky because if anything goes wrong in the winding process, we have to strip off the coil and start over again and make it right. And there's just no room to do that in the Jazzmaster. I've actually taken X-Acto blades and used a Dremel tool to like shave off the end of the X-Acto blade to just this one narrow little point so I can really get in there. And it's also interesting because it's such a narrow space that as you increase the turn count, it's just moving outward instead of other coils where it's sort of scatter winding slowly up over time. On Jazzmasters, it just goes like straight outward. To get the tension dialed in exactly right, it's a really fine line between having the coil fit on the bobbin and not fit on the bobbin, and you approach that line really quickly.
After that quick primer, Kevin took me to his workstation to teach me how to build some Jazzmaster pickups. We started by getting our parts cut out, cleaning them up, then we moved on to bobbin building, starting with our tools.
First of all, I have a bunch of tools kind of laid out here. We have spacers. We have this radius jig. This is a channeled wood block. We have some tape, a hammer. We have these needle nose pliers that are really slim because Jazzmasters are real skinny. And then I've got also this nice craft mat, a metal ruler, and this is some friction tape that we use to wrap them in. Let me grab my handy dandy polarity tester tool. I'm glad you asked because I think I've had this since about 2006. It is a magnet on a stick. After we have the magnets checked and set out, we'll first hammer them into the bottom piece of the Forbon here. And that's gonna be the one that has the eyelets in it, right? And you'll see I did that with the nylon side because it forces it down a little better. And then if you use the rubber side, it'll have a little bit of give to it so that it allows the magnet to kind of pop up out the back. You have that first part done and you want to kind of just lightly get the top piece in place and evenly distribute the way you're hammering over the top so that it doesn't like lopsidedly or unevenly get placed on there. And then we'll get our spacers in. You'll see this has a little bit of a notch there. That's so that the eyelet can stick in. And then you have this radius jig. If you just flip it all over like a big sandwich here, it really is turning into a cooking show. We're making sandwiches. And then you can kind of go ahead and knock everything down a little more into place. And then this is where we'll use the channel block to push the rest of the pieces down around the magnets that are already set to their proper height.
Now that the pole pieces were set, the next step was to glue them in place.
So the main thing you want to make sure of is that you're really fastening the outside poles very strongly because that's gonna take the majority of the tension of the coil. So you just kind of go around the magnets and glue everything. And this is where, you know, you start to notice just how slim this spacing is. And then we just sort of mist them with the accelerator and that'll get everything to cure.
While the glue was curing, Kevin cut out the pieces of friction tape that we'll need later. Then, once the bobbins were dry, it was on to taping up the pole pieces to insulate them from the actual wire.
One layer on the top and then down to do another layer on the bottom. And then end it right in the middle.
Kevin made that look super easy, but I promise you, it is much harder than you might think, but more on that later. Once the bobbins were built, we charged them to eliminate any inconsistencies in the Gauss levels.
And you can feel when they're fully charged.
Then it was on to step 4, winding the pickups.
We wrap the wire around the eyelet and get it set up. And we use this little jig here to allow the eyelets to sit down. Then there's another piece on top, and that fastens the thing to the wheel. Now we have a bunch of different ones for different pickups, so.
This tape that Kevin is placing on the corners of the pickup acts as a ramp for the wire. Without them, the wire can actually get caught on the bobbin and snap during the winding process.
Make sure that all feels good. All right. You want to kind of watch it and make adjustments as necessary. You want it to run right in the middle of the coil. And we have sort of like a macro adjuster here and a micro adjuster here, so we can adjust it to be exactly where it needs to be. There it is, it'll stop and we'll reset it. We tie it to the other eyelet. And then that one's ready to solder and test. While I'm doing that, I'll get the next one going. On the neck pickup, we want to underwind it from the bridge pickup just slightly. And you can use a channel block for this because it sits nice and flat. So you want to kind of tin the soldering iron by adding just a little bit of solder on there, like that. You know all of this because you do super clean soldering work, right? So then I'll grab my meter here and just initially get a sense of if this thing is wound correctly. 8.8, yeah, that's a little high, but when you just wind it, it'll be hotter than if you let it sit for 20 minutes, which you might know, yeah.
Yeah, Jason talked about that when we were talking about that, like once it cools down, like tomorrow, it might be down to like 6 point something.
Totally, it's crazy how that happens.
Once we had the pickups wound, soldered, and tested, Kevin taped up the coils using the friction tape we cut earlier.
And add just a tiny bead, not even a bead, but a drop of glue. You don't want the glue to pour over into the coil because if it does, it'll lock it in place, and as the coil expands and contracts with temperature and stuff, it can actually like break the coil.
Labeled and signed the pickups with the date, the position, and his initials, and then it was on to step 5, attaching the lead wires.
You want it to, basically it'll sink down, it'll hit the iron, and you swipe it away and then just very lightly pull it upward so that the solder sort of flows and follows it. So you can kind of heat up the solder, add this, and swipe that away and just barely pull the wire up like that. And then just hold it long enough for it to cool and stay in place like that. Just carefully pull the cloth down. We don't want it to fray out or anything, but pull it down and tie the wire up and wrap the thing around clockwise from the back of the pickup. And then you want to expose these ends of the wires so that it's accessible and easy to check. Because before we pot these, we're going to go through and test everything and just make sure. So 8.7, 8.3.
With the lead wires attached, it was time for our last step before final testing, wax potting the pickups.
Yeah, these are crock pots, and not just any crock pots. They have to be the vintage style ones. While I'm over here, I like to make sure to keep it safe. These have warmed up for a little while, and we submerge them into the wax. So then we have like a gasket and a top piece. We turn on the vacuum, close the valve. You kind of have to press down on the top a little bit, and then the pressure will start climbing.
Once the pressure got to around 20 psi, we let the pickups sit in the wax until the timer went off, cleaned off any excess wax from the bobbins, put them into a set of clamps to keep them from flaring as they cooled, and with that, Kevin's set was pretty much finished aside from final testing, which meant only one thing. It was now my turn. So red up is, this is south?
That's south, that's south, yep.
All things considered, things were going pretty well.
That looks like a wonderful Jazzmaster pickup.
Awesome.
If this YouTube thing doesn't work out, let us know. You know?
Controlling the flow of the glue was a touch tricky, and I ended up adding a bit more than necessary. Thankfully, it was nothing a little extra accelerator couldn't take care of. Then came to taping, and this is where I really struggled.
I see just a bit of daylight on those magnets. I'd probably unwrap it
Try it again.
and yeah, do a second pass on it. So that's pretty good. It's actually, it's a little bit riding high up on the
Oh no.
top
Okay.
a little bit.
Okay, I think I might have accidentally cut into the tape there.
Yeah, you can see the magnet in there. I think we can sort of do a patch on there.
Okay.
So just for the record here, I would not let this pass in production. But
It's doing so well till then. But even though these pickups were not quite up to Lawler spec, I was going to finish them no matter what.
okay. Beautiful.
Awesome.
Loosen on the poles. And then close the valve up here.
And with a final DC resistance and inductance test, I had built my very first set of guitar pickups. Now, as Kevin said, one of the most important steps that goes into building a Lawler pickup is frequent testing. Testing once they're wound, testing once the leads are attached, testing after potting. So with that in mind, let's put these pickups through one final test. To me, pickups are the heart and soul of a guitar, and the right set can take an instrument from one that you just can't seem to get along with to one that you never ever want to put down. Pickup replacement was actually the very first mod that I ever got started with, and after all this time, it was so cool to finally learn everything that goes into making some of my favorite parts. Now, obviously, I didn't build these pickups on my own. I didn't set the tension nor the traverse on the winder. I didn't do the research nor the testing to find the ideal materials or how many windings to put on. All I did was put them together, made some mistakes, and had some fun. But someday, hopefully someday soon, I would love to take everything I learned to see if I can build a set on my own. A huge thank you to everyone at Lawler for all of their help, especially Jason for being an absolute wealth of knowledge, Kevin for being the best and most patient teacher I've ever had, and Mike for helping me arrange and plan this entire video. Thanks to all of you, I am one step closer to learning everything I can about guitars, and one set of pickups closer to rebuilding my brother's collection. Speaking of which, Kuya, if you're watching, I hope you've been practicing, because pickups are just the first mod I have planned for your dream Jazzmaster. I'm excited to hear what you can do with it once I'm all finished. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll see you in the next one. Happy playing!